So is this on or? It's on, okay. Well, good morning. I'm mostly here to answer your questions. We're back. This is the governor's special session, which is called pursuant to Minnesota Statutes Chapter 12, where if he would like to continue the peacetime emergency for another 30 days, he needs to call the legislature back into session. Normally, when you see a summer special session to finish a budget, we come in, the bills are fully drafted, they've been posted, everybody agrees and signs a sheet of paper of how the next 48 hours will go. But because this is pursuant to the peacetime emergency, it's just a new deadline, right? So June 14th was the day we knew we were coming back. And folks have been working hard to get those bills finished and to get the spreadsheets finalized and the final language, get those posted and ready to go. We know we have 4 bills that are currently completely ready to go. And the Ways and Means Committee will be going over those bills today. They are legacy, commerce and energy, higher education, and agriculture. And then I know that the housing bill is extremely close. Taxes is done. I believe that the language is finalized. That will be the last bill that goes out of the House. The major power or leverage of the House of Representatives is a tax bill must originate in the House. And so we will withhold the tax bill until all of our expectations are met in the budget negotiations. I believe the Senate has the same perspective with regard to the state government finance bill because that funds the legislature and the governor's offices and the executive branch. So those you can look for later in the game. I would say the bonding conversations are still in the earlier stages, but they have about 10 days to get going to catch up with everybody else. E12 is incredibly close, state government finance, environment, and HHS. Public safety is, as everyone expects, going to be probably the last bill to wrap. It's a little bit more challenging on both the finance side and the policy side. And the jobs bill, I think, is pretty close as well. But that one is very important because there's a $150 million fund in there to assist businesses that had a very difficult time in 2020 due to no fault of their own, whether that was the civil unrest or that was COVID-19. And so that's a complicated bill to write about how to spend that $150 million so that it reaches the most people and so that it reaches the people who need it the most. So I'll turn it over to the majority leader and then we'll take questions.
Good morning. It's nice to see all of you, including all of your faces. So I think Minnesotans can have confidence that their state government continues to grind through very challenging, important issues that affect the lives, livelihoods, and the aspirations for Minnesotans all across the state. For the last 15 months, through COVID-19, through the murder of George Floyd, through civil unrest, through 7 special sessions, the largest public works bill in state history, historic police reform and accountability legislation, help for small business, extending unemployment and the regular session, a huge benefit to the state passed by Democrats in Congress and signed into law by President Biden, providing funds for the state and improving our forecast and boosting our economy. State government has continued to work in a bipartisan fashion to try to put together the best possible package of bills and budgets for the state of Minnesota. The good news is we are continuing to function, we are continuing to work through those challenging issues on a bipartisan basis, and the negotiations that we are having on these budget bills are primarily about how to do the best good things for Minnesotans coming out of the pandemic, rather than worrying about cutting back on core and essential services. So we're making sure that our schools have adequate funding across the state to continue their operations, in addition to providing the bonus or additional services that they need to adjust for summer school, to adjust for increased online learning. We're making sure that our healthcare system comes out strong and healthcare workers are going to have a seat at the table and making sure that they get some additional funds. We are working to make sure that our public safety system is more fair, is more just, and addresses the racial inequities included in it, and that we are helping the communities in Minneapolis and St. Paul affected by civil unrest a year ago to build and recover. So It is a slow grind. It is a challenging environment in which to be a legislator and to put together a state budget. But the good news is that the products that we are arguing about, are negotiating about, are all good things. It's a question of how good we can make it for the state of Minnesota.
Questions?
It sounds like you have a lot of work ahead. This is not a couple of day session. Based on what you have just said, are you looking at this going right to June 30th or near that?
I don't think we'll be close to June 30th. I would expect that we'll be done days before that. However, the House GOP minority has placed 5 demands on our plate and has promised to take a very long time to pass these budget bills unless their demands are met. So we do expect that kind of grind that you saw in April. These bills went through the Minnesota House of Representatives in April. Before the bills went into conference, and we have to pass them off the floor again to get them back into conference. So you will see pretty long, I would expect pretty long debates on the House floor. They don't need to be long because we already did this. We are finishing the work of the regular session. We are not starting over. However, the minority has indicated it will take a long time. So I think people should expect that this will take 7 to 10 days.
Last Wednesday, when I talked to Chair Mariani, he said that the Senate had not even responded to the offers that he had made since sometime in late May. Do you know if there's been any progress? And there's also the suggestion that that particular bill, maybe even more than that one, are headed to the vaunted triumvirate. Can you comment on that?
Well, my understanding is that the House and Governor Public Safety team made 5 offers to the Senate negotiators during the regular session. There were no responses from the Republicans in the Senate during the regular session. On May 21st, the Senate Public Safety team forwarded an offer where they accepted some police reform and accountability, a very small number, 3 policies. I think we have 102 different policy innovations in our bill. Our team responded on around May 28th. The Senate said they did not consider our counteroffer to be a counteroffer. And I said to our team, instead of grinding to a halt, why don't you sharpen the pencils, go back. And our team made another counteroffer on June 1st or June 2nd. And then I think that the Senate has made one counteroffer since then, and I think our team was grinding out a response to that over the weekend. I know I was in text communication with Chair Becker-Finn and Chair Mariani. One significant breakthrough happened with regard to public safety on Friday or Saturday. Was we agreed to move $30 million from the disaster contingency account out of their budget target. So essentially giving them $30 million more, and we moved that essentially to the bottom line. So we're hoping with that additional $30 million to the public safety target, they'll be able to finish. And let me just tell you a little bit the rationale. House bill was $167 million, Senate bill was $95 million. The midpoint is $131. They got a target of $105, so they were essentially $26 million short of a midpoint. And for us to shave all the way down to $105 was a little bit untenable, especially when some of the ways that we can address the injustices in our public safety arena are to fund violence prevention programs. And so not in very many areas can you trade money for policy to get satisfaction, but in the public safety bill, it's particularly important that they have the resources they need to fund violence prevention programs. Representative John Thompson brought forward a proposal to really increase the investments in our communities to prevent violence before it starts. And right now that's a part where they're really working hard to get the Senate to agree to fund some of those programs.
Real quick follow, that target is now $135 million? Agreed?
No, it is still $105 million, but they don't need to spend $30 million on the disaster contingency account.
What do you see is at stake in the public safety bill? You say it's the most difficult or the longest, and why is it so difficult? But when you look at it, what's at stake here as you consider it?
Well, we have a fundamental mistrust right now between law enforcement and community, and this breakdown has been going on for a long time, but I think it reached its zenith with the murder of George Floyd. Unfortunately, you know, incidents have continued since George Floyd was murdered, and the tension is very, very high. it's not good for community and it's not good for law enforcement for there to be a lack of trust. And, we know that Minnesotans across the board, 75% of them say that the law enforcement community needs to do better by communities of color, and the current spate of incidents is unacceptable, cannot continue. We also know that 75% of Minnesotans feel very positively towards law enforcement. We count on them to come and be in those situations when courage and bravery is required. What we need to do a better job of is making sure that we have resources to prevent violence before it occurs and to not have officers with lethal force responding to incidents that don't require lethal force. I think that was a significant issue with George Floyd was accused of passing a $20 counterfeit bill. Do you really need somebody with firearms to respond to that? And to respond with force in that situation. Dante Wright was shot when, if a sign and release warrant law were in place, taking him into custody wouldn't have even been on the table. And pulling him over by an officer with a taser or a firearm wouldn't have been something that would have happened. And we can reimagine a world where we don't have people with firearms and tasers dealing with nonviolent interactions with our citizens. The Attorney General, the Public Safety Commissioner spent a year working on how to reduce deadly force encounters between law enforcement and community. And this work is very hard and it's ongoing. And I think both Republicans and Democrats are committed to it. And it is, the work will be better done the less it is politicized, but that's difficult.
Where is this on your priority list?
It's number one.
Do you share Leader Gazaka's assessment this morning that there will be 4 to 5 accountability measures in the final bill, and can you give us a sense of what those are?
I think that there will be more than that, and I think that the negotiators are still working. So at this point, it would be my hope that the chair of the Judiciary Committee in the House and the chair of Public Safety will be able to reach an agreement with the chair of Public Safety and Judiciary in the Senate, and that those decisions will be made by them. I feel great about our team, in particular one of the newest members of our team, Representative Cedric Frazier, lawyer from the Robbinsdale Crystal area, replacing Lyndon Carlson. Just a brilliant legislator, a powerful public speaker, and a very nice human being. So I think having him in the mix is certainly helping them plow through a lot of these important issues.
But has anything been agreed to that you could talk about? Because a lot of people are wondering what the details are, not necessarily where you're at mechanically.
You'd have to ask Chair Mariani and Chair Limmer. I don't know what they have agreed to or not agreed to or what they're still fighting about. I do know on the money piece, because that's where I've been engaged.
Presumably you're not meeting the doubt demands, or else he wouldn't still be threatening to filibuster. What are they, and why won't you be nice to Representative Dow?
So I think his demands are, number one, to immediately end the peacetime emergency. That was his demand on May 2nd of last year before we do a bonding bill. We passed the state's largest bonding bill in October of 2020. Number two would be that the legislature spends every single dollar of federal money. That's not going to happen because as a part of the budget agreement, the governor has jurisdiction over $500 million, of which he has already spent $75 million on summer school. Number three is that we fully fund reinsurance, which is a program that costs approximately $450 million, but does not have a $450 million benefit to the taxpayers of Minnesota and causes us to lose hundreds of millions in federal dollars. I forget what number 4 is. Number 5 is that we stop the $300 a week top off from the federal government on unemployment, and we're not going to do that because people need it and the economy needs it. And actually, number 4 was that we passed the bonding corrections bill and not, separate and apart and immediately from the whole bonding bill. He's willing to take bonding corrections if it's rolled into a bonding bill. But, I would say most of his list is items that can't be agreed to.
Is there a deal possibly in the works, though, on emergency powers after this extension?
Well, I think that the governor and the legislature foresee an end to the peacetime emergency sometime in the not too terribly distant future. But I don't think that we can end it until we've exhausted the federal benefits that we're receiving under the SNAP program that go through September, because that's 30 or 40 million a month that helps people who need help the most. And the governor needs the authority to run vaccine clinics and testing facilities. I think a lot of people probably have availed themselves of the testing facilities that the governor's team has gotten up and running. And so we need to figure out, if we were to end the peacetime emergency, how to make sure he has the authority to continue to test and vaccinate Minnesotans.
So the idea of a hybrid health disaster emergency declaration, that wouldn't keep us in the running for these federal funds then?
I think there's a way that that could work. I think that sort of formulation is certainly on the table for discussion.
Do you plan to have the debate on emergency powers today, or?
Well, you know, we don't actually plan that debate. It's the Republican minority who plans when they will bring motions of that type. I assume that they will have a motion. I think there's been one submitted. So they will have a motion to recall the resolution to end the emergency powers immediately from committee. It's a procedural question of bringing it to the floor for an immediate vote. I expect that that will be defeated after spirited debate. I think it requires 90 votes, and there aren't 90 votes in the Minnesota House to move forward on that basis.
Madam Speaker, did I hear you right? You were talking about SNAP benefits going through September. We're going to be done the emergency before September, correct?
Yeah, I think that there's some regulations that allow, as long as the peacetime emergency continues through a portion of August, that we will maximize the SNAP benefits. So I think that, you know, one could contemplate an end to the peacetime emergency if COVID-19 continues in abeyance, and if the law is absolutely clear that the governor could declare a new one if he needs to.
So, but at least through August, you're saying?
I don't know about through August, you know.
At least through July?
At least into August. I would say don't make plans for July 14th.
So forgive me, I just came back from fishing for a week and I wasn't paying attention. I come back and there's $1.8 billion new dollars that has landed. And I'm like, well, they gotta have figured this all out. You're talking about money can help public safety policy. You're talking about federal benefits from SNAP. We got money. Can you just throw money at the problems?
No, you know, like I said, the only area where the money is a help to resolving policy disputes is public safety. At the global negotiations level, there were certainly things that the Republican Senate wanted that, you know, we would not trade for any amount of money as Democrats, and vice versa. So yes, the money is incredibly helpful, and I think the majority leader said it well. What we're talking about is how many good things we can do for Minnesotans and how we do those good things. And the money that President Biden and the Democrats in Congress have sent to us is great. Also, the fact that we have a projected state budget surplus probably coming down the pike because of Minnesotans getting out and spending money, like on fishing and eating out, things like that. But we don't count the money from those monthly totals until the formal budget forecast. So we have a formal budget forecast in November and then again in February. And we, generally speaking, as a legislature, don't make budgeting decisions except for based on those formal and full economic forecasts.
Does the governor really need his emergency powers in July as well? I mean, now and July? I mean, I think some people...
Yes, he does. You know, I just got off of a call with People of Color and Indigenous Caucus and the Lieutenant Governor, and we spoke at length about really the vaccination gap in communities of color and how do we break through and make sure that everyone in communities of color who wants to get vaccinated has an opportunity to get vaccinated by medical providers that they trust. And so that is a continuing challenge for the state. And the governor has done, and I think, an exceptional job of managing the testing and vaccination programs.
The Majority Leader has a bill introduced today that would essentially continue appropriations at base levels in any budget area where you do not agree to a new budget bill. Is that a brilliant idea or a really, really bad idea?
Well, kind of reminds me of this little device my husband gave me to break my car window open if I'm submerged. You know, it's good to have it, but I don't think we're going to need it.
You were shaking your head, I want to,
Yeah,
you seem
well,
ready to go.
this is, I mean, the subtext of a lot of this negotiation is the fact that Republicans do not believe in investing in public schools. They do not believe in raising revenue to invest in transportation. They do not believe in investing in health care that is affordable for all Minnesotans. They don't believe in a public investment approach to improving the lives of Minnesotans. And so when we're looking at the federal money coming in, a lot of what they're negotiating is for us not to spend it because they don't want to raise expectations that Minnesota will actually have world-class schools again, that we will have a world-class transportation system, or that we will lead the nation in healthcare like we once did. They don't want us to do that. And the idea behind a continuing appropriation is sort of like what Pawlenty managed to do back in 2003, which is to permanently undercut the investment at the state because you change the dynamics of the budgeting process. By taking inflation out of the forecast, we have permanently reduced our ongoing investment in Minnesota. And by creating a continuing resolution as a baseline, it allows a Senate Republican majority or any Republican majority or any Republican governor to essentially have an ability to walk away from negotiations for the purpose of continuing baseline funding and give them a further anti-government edge in budget negotiations. So I think it would be a terrible mistake, and whatever kind of good government arguments they make, it is covering the fact that disinvestment in Minnesotans is their mission.
One more. Back on the emergency powers, several states are letting their emergency powers expire this week. Probably by the end of the week, there'll be 10 to 15 states, maybe more, that no longer have it. Is that going to put pressure on the governor and on you to go along with that same thing? Other states that don't see there being the same level of emergency as there was 6 months ago?
My understanding is that there's only 5 states who have let their emergency expire.
Right now, but there's several that will be expiring this week.
And we'll see what happens. But I think the vast majority of governors have withheld, hung on to those powers, and the vast majority of legislatures in the country have allowed the governors to keep those powers for exactly the reasons I just talked about. Everybody's not vaccinated, and in order to stop the variants and really put the nail in the coffin for this pandemic, we have got to break through and get high numbers of people vaccinated, and we're not there yet.
Just from a workflow perspective, are you planning to be in each of these 7 to 10 days, or are you going to kind of wait for the work to come to you?
Every day except for Father's Day. That was a very unhappy look. Sorry, Brian. Okay.
All right, thank you.